I would like to officially start our dialogue session for this morning. I would like to invite our speaker, Professor Roslan from representing IKRAM, Dr. Surya Dharamdass from Mahindrama, and also Father Surain Raj from College General. Please join me in the floor. I think we are free. We are a free country, so yeah, choose your seat. So, yeah, okay. So before we start today, I would like to introduce our speakers over here. We had Reverend Father Surain Durai Raj. He is the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Kuala Lumpur from Rawang, Selangor. He holds a baccalaureate in theology from Pontifical Urban University, Rome, and licentiate in philosophy from Pontifical and Royal University of Santo Tomas, Manila. Currently, he serves as a Dean of Study at College General here in Penang, currently where we are today. For your information, College General is a seminary for future Catholic priests. Okay. And next we have Professor Dr. Roslan Hashim. He's here today representing IKRAM with us. Is a social movement for Muslims in Malaysia. For your information, despite him representing Muslims group here with us this morning, he is actually a physicist by training. So he's a professional. He's currently teaching at USM as a physics lecturer, but also representing IKRAM here with us today. He has been also very active in a lot of social movement, in giving back to societies, and if I understand correctly, he's also the chairman of the board of directors for network of schools under IKRAM. Next is Dr. Surya Dharamdass. He's also another professional, which is trained engineer and community leader in Penang. She served as the honorary principal of a Buddhist Sunday school, volunteer and the consultative panel of the Young Buddhist Association of Malaysia, Penang branch, and hold the position of vice chairman of the Malaysian Buddhist Examination Syndicates. So I suppose whoever taking like Buddhist examination will really want to get on her good side. She is a regular speaker at both Buddhist and interreligious forum in the northern region of Malaysia and write Buddhist article. Fun fact, this is actually the second time she's been with us on the Let's Talk platform. For those of you who are regularly, joining interfaith dialogue around Penang, you won't be, all these faces are not foreign to you, definitely. They've appeared in also a platform other than Let's Talk. So let's hear from them again today, but although maybe slightly different topic. Okay, so what we're trying to achieve here today is actually to dwell deep on a more theological. All this while for us at Harmonico through Let's Talk, we've held a dialogue on issues that are very close to our daily life. This is our first time to touch upon the issues that are more, deeper in theology. When we first approached by College General, we thought, maybe this is it. Always thought like, when we did interfaith dialogue, how do we actually move the dialogue further? Other than just, now I know, now I understand the issue better, what's next? Usually it's always end at the dialogue. But how do we go deeper in understanding, in exchanging our understanding about each other's religion and teaching more? So hence this is our first attempt at Let's Talk, to go deeper, more into the philosophy, more into the values of perspective religion. Before I start with the first round, I want to give a note. For us here at Let's Talk, we want this to be a neutral platform, and a dialogue shouldn't be a platform for us to compare. To each of us, we are all devoted to our truth. We know what is our truth, and we hold dear to that. And I believe you have your own truth, and we should keep it at that. But let's use this platform to learn about each other, understand better, know better. So in general, we will have a better relationship with one another. That's what we hope to achieve through this platform. Okay, so with that, let's jump into the thing. I think I've talked a lot. I try to keep it short. So what we're trying to talk about today is theodicy. Such a big word. I had to Google it when I first heard about it from our friends at College General. So theodicy is about how one of the biggest questions in philosophy is why there is evil. The big question, in mathematics, there is always all this equation that people struggle, that people still continue trying to answer. The same thing in philosophy. This is one of the root questions that philosophers around the world, thinkers around the world try to answer. And religion come in with some answer. Because at the end of the day, we are here in this world and we do face suffering every day. And religion gives some answer for us to, if God is all powerful, why there is still evil, why there is still suffering in this world. And we hope actually today to hear the answer from our respective speakers on how their respective religion answer this question, give consolation, give an answer for us as a devoted of the religion. So with that, I would like to start with our first round. I would like to invite our first speaker. I would like to start with our host today, which is Father Surain, to answer the questions on how does your respective religion, in this context is Christian Catholic, explain evil and suffering that exists in our world today. With that, the floor is yours, Father Surain.
Thank you, Altika, and once again, good morning to our esteemed panelists, doctors, and to our guests who are here. To answer this question on the problem of evil, allow me to first take us into an understanding of theodicy. Now, theodicy is slightly different from theology in the Christian or the Catholic perspective. They seem to be talking about the same thing but from different approaches. Theodicy would simply mean talking about God, but there is also a similar definition or a summary that we use with the understanding of theology, Christian theology, talking about God as well. So how do we differentiate theodicy from theology in the Christian perspective? This would be a simpler way of understanding. Theodicy is the approach via philosophy, meaning the capacity of the human mind or the human reason to be able to understand something of God from the deductions that are able to be perceived through human reasoning. Theology, on the other hand, is the understanding of God through divine revelation, meaning to say, how God reveals some things of Himself to us, and that breaks down things into our perception or our understanding. So theodicy is the approach to human reason. Theology perhaps would be more of the divine revelation, which would require us the assent of faith to meet reason at some point. So that's the clear distinction between theodicy and theology. And in both these disciplines, we will find the question of God and suffering, the very essence of our conversation today. I would use most of my approach of answer in this forum based on some of my readings of the writings of scholars within the discipline of the church. Notably, St. Thomas Aquinas, who is known as a theologian and a philosopher in the church, and has extensively taken this topic in his writing. Now, Thomas Aquinas begins the discussion on evil in this way. Which is easier to speak about? Evil or its opposite, which is the good? Thomas Aquinas would resort to say it's easier to speak about evil than good, because evil is right before our eyes. Evil is real. Evil is existential, and therefore suffering is existential. It's right before us, it's embedded within our life. Whereas to speak about good, now that's another thing. To put words to understand or to define goodness, which is the opposite of evil or the opposite of suffering, that's a bit more tricky and difficult. But it begins at that level. So the Christian understanding of suffering comes from this approach. First we understand what is good, and then we understand what is evil. So the understanding of good begins first with two things. What would we say as good? To say that something is good means something is desirable, something is beautiful, something is captivating. And for St. Thomas Aquinas, the simplest example of what is beautiful, what is desirable, what is perfect is existence. That we exist, that we come, that we are called from nothingness into beingness, that we are rather than we are not. And everything else begins from there, that we are, we exist. And it's because we exist that everything else trickles down and happens. Now, our existence is contingent as human persons and as things that are around us, animals, plants, things that are around. They are contingent, here for today, gone for tomorrow. But there is also a necessary being that causes creation to be. Because we exist, we can look back and say, some beings brings us into existence. And then Thomas Aquinas defines that part. That being, necessary, not contingent, essential, must exist, of its own, uncaused by others, is God. And the element of definition in this, because we exist and we are perfect, God who creates is also perfect to the full. And because He is perfect, one of His attributes is that He is good. If we have goodness in us, it is because the one who created us is good. Now the tension is this, when we speak of reality. There is an omnipotent God, a powerful God, who is a good God, but evil exists in the world. And if you speak of this too, there will be always a tension. If you try to put this in a syllogism, an omnipotent God, existence of evil. A good God, an existence of evil. There will be tension. The outcome will always be not positive. Thomas Aquinas looks at suffering, therefore, within the lens of this way. Thomas Aquinas looks at suffering not as an essential existence, but a privation of what is good. That which we ought to be, that which we have been created to be, which is good. Evil exists as a privation, as an attribute, as something that is missing from what we ought to be. Take, for example, human eyes. It has its function, we have to see. The function of the eye is to see. What happens if that light is diminished? It's a privation of what we ought to see. It's a privation of the ability to see. But blind people also have eyes. Correct? Yeah, blind people also have eyes. It's just that there is a privation. Evil is something like that. That is a Christian understanding. A privation of the good that God has created. And that's a summary of how we see evil. And from there trickles suffering, pain. The ultimate of it is death. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Father. So I think it's for us to remember that without the light, you wouldn't know what is black. So in a way, I think that's how what's proposed by Thomas Kuhn is us in understanding evil. So next, I would like to invite Dr. Surya to shed us some light on how Buddhism explains the suffering in our world today.
So good morning, Abhika, fellow panelists, audience. Today's topic is actually very, very interesting because it touches on the word suffering, where from Buddhist perspective is a commonly used word in sharing a lot of the teachings to help people understand the real world. But having said that, from a Buddhist perspective, we don't only just focus on the negative. We acknowledge in the scheme of things there's the positive and the negative. So we need to understand the scheme of things. So on that note, let me bring you to the Buddhist perspective to understand why is there suffering, or how does our religion explain about evil and suffering. So I'll bring you to the element of the pancha niyama, or what we say the rules that are observed. Okay, and these are natural laws. Alright, it's not created by Buddhism, but they're natural laws. So these laws contribute to what is going around to help us understand the scheme of things. Okay, the common term that is also used to understand why there's evil or why there's suffering, which may be to a certain extent misused, is karma. I think a lot of us hear the word karma. When things go wrong, oh, karma is the problem. Okay, so very often that is used. But today what I want to share with you is not everything is because of karma. Okay, so that is why I want to share with you about the 5 rules of the pancha niyama. And this first rule that I'm going to talk about is utu niyama. Utu niyama is actually the natural law that governs non-living matters. And this is very simple. The word utu refers to season or climate. And we talk very often when we say about evil and suffering, or why that natural disaster happened, or like recently what we see is because of the strong winds during storm, a lot of trees falling and people sometimes get killed, cars get damaged, and so on and so forth. So is this due to karma? No. Okay, this is not due to karma. So we link it to utu niyama because this is the natural law that is happening. Alright? So we have strong wind, rain, tsunami, floods, dry season, and so on and so forth. Then we have the second niyama, that is what we call the bija niyama. It's another natural law. And this governs what? This governs the living matter. Example, germs, seeds, and so on. Okay? So for example, if you take a mango seed and you plant it, what do you get? You will definitely get a mango tree, not a durian tree, not a guava tree, right? You will get back a mango tree, alright? And what is the fruit that you will get from the mango tree? Mangoes. So it's a natural law, okay? Then we have the third law, that is the karma niyama. Now, karma is a very, very misused term, which I'll say today, because people understand briefly about karma as being the natural cause or law, right? But at the same time, it is a very broad area when you talk about karma. So I'll not go into too much detail, but I'll give you enough to understand to a certain extent. When we talk about karma, there's the wholesome and there's the unwholesome. There's the positive and there's the negative. So when we talk about wholesome, there are 3 aspects we look at. We look at wholesome or skillful bodily actions, wholesome or skillful verbal actions, and wholesome or skillful mental actions. Okay? So to give a little bit about this, before I go to the detailed element of it, let us not forget there's the unwholesome piece as well. And that is why we see some things happening, right? So we divide this into 3 categories, right? As I mentioned, bodily, verbal, and mental. So let's take a look at the bodily first. So in Buddhism, one of the 5 precepts that common people like us observe, the first one is to abstain from killing. And killing is the first one under the category of unwholesome. And if you look at it the other way around, If you don't kill, you don't destroy living things, you have to look at being kind, being compassionate, and helpful. So we now understand, okay, if as a Buddhist, we don't want to see evil of people dying and so on, what do we need to do? We need to uphold on a day-to-day basis our 5 precepts. Very simple, very layman. The second element for this karma niyama under bodily action is abstaining from stealing or theft, right? So the wholesome element is you need to respect property. Property can be simple. For example, don't vandalize in a public area, on a public transport, simple things like that, right? So when you don't vandalize, what happens? People don't suffer because the public property and so on is not damaged. People live happily, peacefully, right? Then there's a third element for bodily action. That is also part of our 5 precepts that we observe as common lay people. That is to abstain from sexual misconduct. So we respect and don't violate others' loved ones or cherished ones. So this will take away the problem of, when you see somebody got raped and so on and so forth, which is suffering when someone goes through that process. So the wholesome side of it is you respect people's loved ones, right? Then we talk about, still under karma element, the 4 actions for speech. The first being to abstain from false speech. You don't tell lies, people trust you, right? And people understand the truth. The best example I'll give you for this is social media today. Sometimes you don't know what is true, what is not true. But people get carried away and they continue to post and post and post until what is not true seems to be true. Same thing on WhatsApp as well. So social media is a very, very tricky area. So the first element for speech is abstain from false speech, don't lie, don't deceive, speak only the truth is the positive side of it. So that you don't have people suffering because of false speech. Right? Second one under speech for karma is to abstain from malicious speech. So you don't incite person A to go against person B. You don't create trouble. Okay? When you don't create this kind of trouble, people don't suffer, there's no evil. Everybody lives in harmony. That is the positive side of it, or the wholesome side of it. Then the third one under speech is abstain from harsh speech or vulgar words. Okay? So that is the negative side of it, or unwholesome, and the positive is speak gently, speak politely, speak with pleasant words. When you speak politely, chances are people will not get upset, people will not get angry. You don't raise people's temperature, because when you raise people's temperature, people may do things that you will regret later. Okay? So again, this is how you calm the situation and have things under control. And the fourth one under speech is abstain from frivolous talk or worthless talk. Okay, so only talk what is necessary. And this links back to another element which I'll touch at the later part today, which is the Noble Eightfold Path. So we have right speech there. And so what we are talking about here is speak at the right time, what is true to the right person. Then things will be very peaceful and harmonious. You don't create problems in society. Okay? And the third aspect of this karma niyama is wholesome and unwholesome actions in relation to the mind. Mind is the most important area. Alright, mind is the most important area. Because the roots of evil actually come from the mind. Like greed, hatred, and delusion. So first of all, don't be greedy and always want everything for yourself. Okay? In Buddhism, one of the first things that the Buddha always used to share is dana, giving. Learn how to give, learn how to share. Alright? And sacrifice, don't just keep for yourself. Second one in relation to the mind is, don't think in terms of hate or destructive thoughts. Alright? Always have a good intention towards others. Spreading good very, very important because the common good is going to create harmony. Thirdly, cultivate right view. Always understand not just about your own religion, but also respect each other's religion, religious tolerance. Okay? Now the fourth niyama is the Dhamma niyama. This is the law of cause and effect, law of other aspects of truth, of the natural forces, such as from scientific terms, things like gravity falls under this category, or electrical and magnetic forces also fall under this category. All right? And the fifth one is the Chitta niyama, which connects back to the mind, because everything falls back to the mind, how your mind works in terms of consciousness, thinking, and perception. So you can see that in Buddhism, there are a lot of natural laws that we need to understand in the scheme of things, and that is how you determine your element that you can influence, but there will be certain things that will happen which are beyond your control, but as long as you understand the scheme of things, you will be more prepared to face this aspect. Okay? So on that note, I think it should be a good starting point from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Surya. I think for us who are someone external of the faith, I think the element we often associate to Buddhism is always karma alone. I mean, that's the case for me. I think here it has been rather enlightening for us to know there are more to that, and basically there's a web of knowledge for us to take from today. And that's the start for, I think that I already have my follow-up question for that later. I hope we can dig deeper into that. So next, I want to invite Prof. Roslan to share the perspective from Islam.
Assalamualaikum and very good morning. Thank you, Ms. Atika and hello, panelists, Surya and Brother Surain and Audin. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share what I understand my religion. I need to say, as a Muslim, we refer to the Quran as a source of belief and understanding. But I'm still learning. To say that I understand my religion 100% is not it's not a good way, because as we progress, we're learning more and more our own religion. But what I can share with you is what I understand from my religion based on the Quran and then interpretation from the scholars, not very much from myself. But of course, I can add up what I understand, what I learned with the experience that I had being on this stage almost at the Wabama's age already, close to 60 years. So it's sufficient experience, but still learning as a student of Islam and of course other religion as well. So thank you very much for giving the opportunity. So based on the question, forget the question already. How Islam is being the suffering and pain. Actually, again, I use the Quran because the Quran is a source of our information. I believe that God sent through Prophet Muhammad as a final messenger and tells Muhammad through Gabriel or angel what's happening before, even at before the creation, as well as at the moment of the creation of the first human being, which is Adam. So at this critical moment is shared in Quran in the verse called chapter Cow or Al-Baqarah, verse 30. When God say in the congregation of angels that He is going to create viceroy on the surface of the earth to govern the earth. This is in the heaven. And the angel, so-called, there's scholars arguing that the angel even complain with the question, pose back question to God. Are you going to create human that's going to spread corruption and spill the blood. Remember the word is corruption and spilling of blood, which means the killing, the corruption, injustices going to happen. Because angel see, and there's some discussion about that, how angel know. But simply put, that the angel question why. And God simply said that I know something that you don't know. Of course, God is all-knowing, but angel has the right to ask why he want to create human, going to spill the blood and cause corruption. So this corruption, spilling of the blood is suffering, evil. The topic that we discussed today. But God say, I know something that you don't know. The scholars discuss about the meaning of I know that you something that you don't know. Among them is that from this suffering, from this evil corruption, from this descendant of Adam came the prophet, good people, which rose above the black side of history, where you can see that so people with super character coming from the place being surrounded with corruption and blood spilling. This is what we see. Now I'm going to share what I mean. Meaning to say, in this life, is God created people with the mind and soul where they can choose. They can choose. And whatever choice, you be accountable for that. There's so many verses in the Quran giving you the idea of doing good, the idea of doing bad. So if you choose, you will be facing the consequences. So in Islam does not disregard the presence of evil and suffering. But Islam tells if you decide to corrupt, decide to spill the blood, you will be responsible of your own doing. That's why the suffering, the evil, how to deal with that in this world, how to deal with that. In order to deal, we have to bring God. We have to bring the hereafter. Because everything in this world, the injustices, corruption, atrocity, the killing, cannot be served. Justice cannot be normally be fulfilled in the earth, but can be brought back to justice in the hereafter. So that's why we have to believe in the hereafter. Okay? So this is the original of the sin, the suffering, the evil is from the men themselves. That's why God mentioned in another verse called Arum. Arum verse 41. Meaning to say that the meaning is that corruption has happened or has appeared throughout the land and the sea by reason of what the hands of people has earned, so that he will let them taste of the effect of their wrongdoing, so that they may return. So the end of the word is may return. That means there's so much corruption happening on the surface of the earth, and due to that corruption, you can see injustices, and the effect of injustices. For example, now, even we sometimes got nothing to do with that also being affected. But God say, why God allowed that to happen? Suffering and pain, so that they may return. Return to God means they become righteous. They improve their behavior, they repent, and they correct themselves, they come back to God. So Islam again does not disregard the presence of suffering and evil, but Islam also teaches the second section, how to deal with the suffering, and of course with the good belief in God whatever He does, He's a best planner. He planned for us. So when the evil atrocities and suffering befalling upon us, we have to be patient. At the same time, we have to be also try to alleviate the suffering of ourselves as well of our fellow human being, in the hope that we will lighten or alleviate the suffering by fellow human beings. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you to our three speakers. Father Surain mentions about both Father Surain and Dr. Surya mentioned in the bigger scheme of things. There's evil. There's goodness. It starts from there. You won't be able to define evil if you haven't experienced goodness yourself. Like Professor Roslan mentions, that's where the divine come in, and religion come in with how do we, because like every evil in the world is a responsibility of a human. It's a human doing at the end of the day, and religion come in with how you should react to it. With that, I think fair to say that there are some natural evil that we can't help it. There's some suffering that actually sometimes has nothing to do with us, but we are inflicted by it. So the next questions I would like to ask our fellow speakers here is, if I can't help it but have to go through the suffering, how did the religion console me? How did the religion comfort me to go through the suffering? So I will start again with Father Surain and maybe Professor Roslan Hashim and Dr. Surya.
So how does religion help us cope with the reality of suffering, the reality of, in the larger scheme, evil that is still a prevalent force? For this part, I seek the resource of a fellow priest and a writer, a theologian, and by his own thoughts, also a philosopher, Father Ron Rolheiser, OMI, who writes frequently as a periodical writer. And in his writing, he puts it this way, having faith and belief in God does not dispense us from being free from suffering. It doesn't give us a free pass that because we believe in God, because we have faith in God, we will not suffer, we will not endure pain, we will not be confronted with the presence of evil which transforms into negativity or things that are harmful. No, on the contrary, we see so many people who have great faith, great devotion, great love for God, who still struggle, who still need suffering, who still endure pain, or who know people who are struggling, who suffer, endure pain. How do we reconcile this then? Ron Rolheiser, in one of his articles, speaks about this. A simple analogy of understanding. He speaks about this by saying that the God that we meet, perhaps more clearly in the Christian scriptures, is not a God who rescues, but a God who redeems. And an analogy that we find in the scriptures, a good example that he brings out is John's Gospel, where he speaks about the raising of Lazarus for friends who are of other faith. There is this episode of Jesus having friends. There is this group of friends of his, Martha, Mary, Lazarus. And Lazarus dies. Jesus comes late for the funeral. Late. So the predicament of suffering and death, which is the ultimate act, has taken place. Human person died, finished. Much later, 4 days later he comes. And then the miracle takes place in the context of faith, After the weeping and the questionings, then he raises the dead. Lazarus comes back alive. God gives life that way. But here is the analogy that is used. Suffering is never prevented from those who believe. Therefore, God doesn't, in many instances, rescue us from what is going to be an impending suffering that is happening. That's always our hope. God will help us in this. But more often we find, especially the story of Lazarus, suffering has had its cause. Death has taken the life of a person, but God finally redeems. Even when suffering has come to its pinnacle, God redeems back life. This is true of people who believe in God, people who do not believe in God, whichever way we look at it, but it's true of the same of what happens in the life of Jesus, because he goes to the cross and then he goes to resurrection. Thomas Aquinas will speak of this beautifully in the Summa, where he grapples with this idea. There is suffering that will take us and grip us, pain, ultimately death. Where do we find God in this redeeming work rather than a rescue? Once in a while, God may rescue us. That is what we call miracles. But it's not always, not every other day. Every other day we have to cope with a lot of this suffering. But God's work is to redeem. That means, even if suffering prevails, God redeems us back. Thomas Aquinas will say, and he goes back to St. Augustine, Thomas Aquinas' thought, and he will say, since God is supremely good, he would not permit any evil at all in his works unless he was sufficiently powerful and good to bring good even from evil. And that is the nature of God. Because God is good, God can still bring goodness even from evil. Perhaps that's one way of understanding in the Christian perspective why suffering exists and yet does not have the final say, because God still can redeem us back. Human persons like us, let's put it this way, we struggle to understand this reality. Because, number one, we are susceptible to suffering. Number two, it is an experience that is so real, it makes us powerless. Number three, finally, when it comes to death, we carry up our heads in our surrender. What can we do more than that? We are totally helpless. And so when we speak about an omnipotent God, a good God who can actually redeem us back, it's very hard to understand that language. But the reality of it is this, that if evil exists, it's not a sharing partner with God, no. That is why Aquinas says evil is a privation of the good that God has created. That God has created everything good, including us. Evil and suffering enter the world that way and prevent that goodness, the privation of it. But it continues to exist. It must only exist because a powerful God allows it to exist, because even from its midst, God can draw goodness out of it. Take, for example, the pandemic. We were just talking about it this morning outside. It threw us into the deep end of our life, correct? All of us. And yet, if we look back today, how much goodness did we learn from it? Whether it was the beauty of nature that came back, whether it was lives that got settled for a while, even though many lost lives, but still those surviving, look back and say, there is still some goodness that we have learned from that event. I think the closest we would say to a catastrophic event is the pandemic that hit us hard. It did not discriminate anyone. Good people survived, bad people died. No. Nothing of that. It went across everywhere. And yet, God continues to redeem, because for those who continue to live here, lessons of goodness continue to exist. For those who have gone beyond, that is how God continues his work there with them. Because God is still alive. God lives. and we continue to live even though we pass from this world. So that's the aspect of faith that matches the reality of suffering in this life. Thank you.
How did the consolation, how did you comfort us in those times?
Yeah, right. So again, we started with the reality that the suffering is exists, and then we cannot expect that we living in the world where there's no pain, suffering, and people. So you have to face with the reality. In fact, Islam is embedded with the belief, because it's stated in the Quran, as I mentioned just now. The suffering, corruption, justice going to appear in front of us, and then you will be tested on how you are dealing with that. So this is kind of consolation, because we believe in the hereafter. We spend 70, 60, 50 years in this world, and going to spend forever, eternal life. But whatever we do in the short span of life on the surface of the earth will be counted. One of the things that will be counted is that how do we deal with the suffering and the atrocities and the difficulty, adversities befalling upon us as well as fellow human beings and the inhabitant of the world. That's why God mentioned in the Quran, another verse in the Quran, asking human being with the meaning, are you thinking that you're going to enter paradise or heaven without being tested like those before you who being tested with the suffering and adversity to the point that their life be shaken, and the messenger, which is the prophet, come together with them, and they together asking God, when is the God's help going to come to us? And indeed, he said, God said, the God's help is near. So we understand the meaning of this verse, talking about the suffering inflicted upon us by other party which inflict cruelty and injustice upon us. So we have to be being tested and be very patient. Patient meaning not to submit. That's why there's another narration of hadith, tradition of the Prophet, peace and blessing upon him, with meaning to say, if you see the evil thing happen in front of you, your responsibility is that to move with your hand, if you are capable. If not, move with your words, your speech, your writing, and now social media. And if not, being able to do the first two, they move with your heart, meaning you not supporting the cruelty that happened in front of you. But that is the weakest of faith. So we have three choices as human beings to do that. Meaning to say, the consolation is that the promise of paradise. So we have to try our best. That's why you see in front of our eyes now, for more than 8 months in the Strait of Gaza, people talking about that. Actually, suffering is being endured by the Palestinian people for the past 76 years. But only now, for the last 8 months, we can see more clearly because we be connected by the handphone. We can see real life. How children being butchered in hospital, being shot, 40,000 of them being killed, hospital being razed by bulldozer. But not a single person that you interview in the Strait of Gaza complained to God. Where is God? They complain that, well, they are fellow human beings, well, they're Muslim. One guy, 11 members of his family gone. It's recorded in the TikTok. Oh God, you take my father, you take my mother, you take my children, you take my brothers, but please don't take my faith. This is the word coming out from people who suffered atrocities at the highest level. But with the firm belief, the promise of God, they got to be raised among the inhabitants of the paradise, which console their soul. That's why you see they remain steadfast from day one. If you want to come from October 7th until now, they won't go away because this is our land. And we have the promise from God. So the best they can do is not, they are not submitting, but they form a resistance group. And then for your information, they are winning the war. I went there 2011. I go there, of course their time is a bit calm. And I asked one of them, what was their word? They say, thank you very much for coming. We are not looking for your money. But the fact that you come from 1,000 miles away gives us the strength in our spirit that we are in the right path, defending our land from the atrocities. So this kind of consolation that people cannot understand. That's why you want to console yourself, we have to pair with God. We cannot solve the problem atrocities without God. And the hereafter. The hereafter we will get all justice being preserved. But on the surface of the earth, the powerful people can use all the media, everything to show that the atrocities is good and they have justification killing innocent people. But in the hereafter, we will face the true just, which is God Himself. So this kind of consolation that we, as a Muslim, not being affected directly, but I know if I have them, that's also in the verse of Quran. If I have people under suffering, I have my reward as well in their hereafter. So that's why we gathering the money and help them, in a possible way we can, and then we pray to God that one day the Palestine or Palestine will be free. Sorry to bring the event in Palestine, but this is the manifestation of how a strong belief in God and hereafter, which make 2 million people in the state of Gaza remain steadfast for the last 76 years until today. And when we see that the powerful nation now is crumbling, you see half of the international siding with the what do we call it, perjuangan, or the cause, the fighting for the freedom in Palestine, because they are on the just cause, and this is what consoles them, and then people can see. And then even non-Muslim now, you see in the West, in the university, in the United States or UK, now they are picketing to show their solidarity with Palestine. This is what the father said. From the atrocities, you can see good people coming in. This is the border between evil and goodness. And then goodness is not coming only from Muslim, but coming from even the non-Muslim who are siding with the humanity, the just world. And you can see the atrocities, the evil now being put into the corner. So this, to me, is the work of God. From the atrocities coming out, you see people with good character outshine, and you see the good quality of people. And this is the positive side of believing in God and believing in the hereafter. That I believe this is the true teaching of Islam. I'm embracing it, and I'm enjoying the goodness. I can see the goodness of being a Muslim for uh, the humanity as love.
I think we can see almost similar theme coming from Christianity and also Islam about the idea of redemptions and the belief of the hereafter. I think I would like to let's hear from perspective from Buddhism. But before that, I would like to also welcome a question from the floor. This is not just our conversation. This is only like 3 religion here. We also wanted to hear from you. And if you have a burning question, please do raise up your questions for later. For now, let's hear from Dr. Surya on perspective from Buddhism. How the religion comfort its devotees in time of suffering.
Okay, the word suffering, as I mentioned earlier, is a very common term that we talk about when we share about Buddhism. And on that note, let me bring you back to the time of Buddha. And Buddha, if you look at the history of Buddhism, the last Buddha that we spoke about was from India, right? And also, there have been many Buddhas in the past. There will be Buddha in the future as well. So that is how Buddhism philosophy is about who is the one who is sharing about the teachings of the Buddha. So the last Buddha was from India. He's also a normal human being, but he's from a royal family. He was a prince. And it was predicted, legend says, it was predicted when he was born, there was a naming ceremony, so on. It was predicted by the Brahmins at the time that he will either become a king of the world or he will choose the ascetic path. So of course, being the father, the king, he was very worried that, what's going to happen if I don't have a successor, right, in the royal family. So what the king did was he tried to protect the son from seeing the real world, from seeing the suffering out there. So he provided all the luxuries, all the entertainment and so on within the 4 walls. He created different palaces for different seasons and so on, so that he has all that comfort, right? Now, eventually what happened was, even though the father protected him from seeing all this suffering, also got him married. At that time, marriage was arranged marriage, and also people got married very young. So he got married at the age of 16 to his cousin, and he had a good life. But over time, he got very curious what's going on out there and so on, and he wanted to go and see the city. And what he saw when he went out, all his different trips, when he went out to the city, he saw what we call the 4 strange sights. He actually saw an old man for the first time. He had never seen anybody old. And he asked the people around him, who is this? What is this? Because he has never seen somebody old before. And then he realized, we will all grow old one day. Then, another trip, he saw a sick man. And he also hasn't seen somebody sick before. And he asked around, what is this? And then he was told, we will all also go through this journey. We'll probably fall sick one day as well. Thirdly, another trip, he saw a dead body, which he has also never seen before. And he asked, what is this? And he was told, we will also pass away one day. So you just imagine, these are very basic things, right? And he was so surprised, we're all going to grow old, fall sick, and pass away one day, my goodness. And then the 4th trip, he saw an ascetic, very peaceful, very calm, and very happy. Then he asked, he said, this person has decided to go and find the answer why this is happening. So he is renounced the family life and so on, and he chose the path to go and explore and find some answers. So then he said, maybe I should also follow what this person is doing, because I'm also very curious. I'm from a royal family. I have all the riches in the world. I have all the luxury, but this is impermanent. Not only I, but my family members, we will all grow old, fall sick, and pass away. So how to solve this problem? So that was a very high-level definition of suffering when we talk about suffering in Buddhism. All right. So at the age of 29, not at the age of 29, when he now became a father of a baby boy. Just when he heard the good news, he's now a father of a baby boy. He is now deciding to make the decision to become an ascetic, leave the palace, leave his wife, leave his family, and go find the answer. Because he knew that his family will be well taken care of. But he needs to help everybody find that answer. Right? So he left, he became ascetic, and of course it's not so easy to find the answer just like that overnight. So he followed some of the teachings of the other ascetics that were around in India at that time, and he picked up some meditation as well. But eventually he found that, he was at a very extreme asceticism path, and he was so weak, he was about to die. And he realized that, no, this is not the way for me to find the answer. So he decided to go into what we say is moderation, right? So not extreme path, and he took some meal back again and get back some energy. So after he took that final meal, which was a very, very, very nutritious meal, we talk about milk rice, those who are in the Buddhist religion, I think I always share this story, in connection with the Kamparot temple where I come from, where it has that rich story of that link, and that is how the Kamparot Manigrama temple is called colloquially in Hokkien, Guleng Bud, Milk Buddha. So one day if you want to know a bit more detail, I can share that. But coming back to the topic here, so basically, after he took that meal, he sat there, he said, I'm not going to get up from this seat until I find the answer. So he sat there, he meditated, and there are a lot of steps of meditation that we talk about. First is to reach that level of focus, all right? What we say is samatha, with full concentration, and then use that focus to go into insight, the next level, to get that wisdom. So he developed the insight wisdom, and he found the answer. So that is what we share in Buddha's teachings today, which we talk about the Four Noble Truths. Okay? Where the first noble truth is suffering. So we talk about this. So suffering is not I met with an accident, I failed my exam, I didn't get the promotion or the disaster, but there's more to it, because every one of us grows old, falls sick, and pass away. And as long as we are reborn, we're going to go through that cycle again and again. So we talk about samsara, the cycle of birth and death. Alright? So that was the first noble truth he shared. Then, the second noble truth that he shared is, so why is this suffering happening? Because we are craving. We want to be reborn again. So as long as we have this craving and we want to be reborn again, we are going to go through this again and again and again. Right? So we come to the third noble truth, end of suffering. So we need to find the answer for end of suffering. So what is the answer for end of suffering? Leads you to the fourth noble truth. The Noble Eightfold Path. Right understanding, right thoughts, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration, which can be classified into three groups. In the Pali language, we say Sila, Samadhi, and Panya. Sila is the ethical part of it, like what I shared, some part of it is the precepts, right? Samadhi relates more to the concentration part of it, meditation and so on, and Panya is the wisdom. So, net in Buddhism, what we advocate is to each of us realize that as long as you're going to be reborn again and again, you're going to go through this suffering of old age, sickness, and death. So, you have to acknowledge that you don't want to go through that, and you want to end it. So you want to end it, that means you don't want to have craving. You don't want to have craving, then that cycle will end. And what you will achieve is Nibbana. That's what we share or advocate in Buddhism. So Nibbana, that means if you are taking the path of becoming a Buddha, as I also shared earlier, there have been Buddhas in the past. There was a Buddha, the last one that we talk about is the one who was born in India. And there will be Buddhas in future when all of this knowledge will be forgotten. Because all this truth is out there. Buddha just help you to refresh your memory. This is out there. This is the scheme of things so that you understand and you practice so that you don't go through this suffering. That is what Buddhism is all about. Very simple. Alright? To achieve Nibbana. That's it. You don't want to be born again. You don't want to go through the suffering again and again. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Surya, Prof, and also Father Surain for the enlightening answers on how religion comforts us when it comes to suffering. Okay, before I move to the next questions, I also would like to open to the floor if there is any questions, or maybe any of our faith representatives here would like to share perspective on their own religions. If there's any, maybe I can see a show of hands. Because of our mind is a bit, body mind is a bit limited, I need to invite you to the front, maybe to the front bench to get the mic. You can introduce yourself and maybe share something.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Segal Krishnan. I'm from the Baha'i community of Penang. Good morning, everyone. I just want to thank Monica for organizing this and inviting us, and for College for hosting it. So I think it's a really laudable effort when we talk about the very essence of harmony is really bringing us together and create deep understanding. In some of the conversations that have taken place today, it's really enlightening in so many aspects. So one key thing that struck me personally is that when you look at the physical reality and you see that sometimes the human condition requires that we put labels on things, and sometimes we look at the truth through these lenses, right? But the essence of the truth remains there. And though we look at, like this example is amazing because you're looking at suffering from the standpoint of different perspectives of religion, right? So these are like lenses we have in front of us. But then the essence is still the same. The essence is goodness. That's what the discussion is all about. It takes goodness to vanquish evil, right? So one of the key points that was shared just now that really struck me again is the idea that, we talk about the existence of suffering and evil is because it's a lack of goodness. Like this, in the Baha'i concept of understanding of matter of evil and good is the idea that, you have evil exists or darkness exists because there is a lack of brightness. So evil is the absence of light. So that is a concept that runs through, no matter how we look at it, what language we use to describe it, or what terms we use, the essence is still the same, right? And that's the uniting point. When we talk about a good God is one that unites, right? And the divisions only are human-made. The divisions are only created by humans. So this unity point that rallies humans together is the goodness of God. And that's the one thing that I gained from this panel today, and I want to acknowledge and appreciate that.
Thank you so much for your insight just now. I want to move on to the next and concluding round of our session this morning. We talked about how religion comfort, but I remember how the Surya opened the session earlier with how you should behave, what's the action, the good action, the right action you should the role you have to play in this world. So I want to bring back these questions to our panel here. Religion not only offers us comfort, but it's also give us a guide on what kind of person we have to be, because suffering is inevitable, right? So I would like to throw the questions to our panelists here. And how did religion? What is taught by the religion on how we should cope with the suffering that we have today? What is our responsibility as an individual, as a community, to help people in suffering? With that, I would like to start with Dr. Surya first, and then we can hear from Dr. Surain and conclude with Prof. Roslan.
So, actually, this is a very, very interesting topic. When I first saw the title when you shared with me, and I said, suffering, evil, yeah, this is the real world, right? And very often people look at it as, so what am I supposed to do? Am I waiting for an answer from up there to solve my problem? Or I can play a part? So in Buddhism, what we advocate is, each of us has to play a part. And just like the topic we were sharing earlier as well, for some of the things that are happening in society today, we don't just wait for one organization to do the job. Everybody plays a part to complete the puzzle. So that is the key message. I'll give you a simple example, very layman, on how I think a lot of organizations today, whether Islamic, Christian, Hindu, Baha'i, Buddhist, and so on, play a part. And I think that was also observed very much during the pandemic. Pandemic is an excellent example for this, where we saw that some people didn't even have food, didn't even have jobs, but we saw a lot of people come forward giving free food and so on, right? So that was a very, very good example. And today, what I want to also share from the Buddhist side as well, simple example from our own organization, we provide services like free clinic, we provide services like a cancer counseling center, we provide services for senior citizens, like free food and so on, or even free haircut for that matter. Sometimes we're celebrating their birthdays. And it's open not just for Buddhists, it is open for all religious groups. And I think these are the little things that the different religious groups are doing to play a part so that we reduce the suffering of other people. Doesn't matter which religion they belong to, but because this is the way we can help across humanity to help overcome the little suffering that we see. And besides that, there are always the bigger platforms as well, like this kind of platform where we can share and create a better understanding and cooperation to drive some of this agenda. Because alone we cannot do very much, but together we can achieve results that are multiplied in a bigger number. So I think those are initiatives that we need to continue to drive so that we can help to overcome suffering and evil on a bigger scale. But net, everybody has to play a part. Everybody needs to perform wholesome actions, like what I shared just now. Focus on three areas, right? Speech, right? Body, and the mind. I always like to remind people intention is very important. Sometimes, because of our upbringing and so on, we do not know how to say the right things or act the right way. Always look back at the person. Why is this person behaving in this manner? Is it the person means any harm? Maybe no. The person has a good intention, but the person does not know how to verbalize or act in the right way. So always look back and see how to find the good in others, not the evil in others. Thank you.
To approach this last section, I take the approach of this in a more ordered way of my reasoning. The first is this: a good God is not the source of suffering. And that's the first thing I wish to put forth here. Because it will be antithesis. If a good God produces suffering, He is also compromised as us. And that is not the fact. A good God doesn't produce suffering. So the second question, where does suffering come from? If we go into the detail of Christian theology, one word that will arise is sin. But that's another day's conversation. To simply put in the lens of theodicy, where does suffering come from? The root of it is evil. Where does evil come from? That which is done to us by others, or that which we do to others. And that's a simple way of understanding. Because of our compromised human limitation, that which we do to others or that which is done by others to us. How then do we find some aspect of what we can do to remedy the situation? We go back to the scriptures, the Christian scriptures. I think something more universal that can be spoken about in this forum, in this space, is this. It is in this scripture, in the Christian scripture, as much as it is in various ways in other faiths and other beliefs, the golden rule: do unto others what is done to you. To beget goodness for others, to beget right conduct, right manner of life. Perhaps that helps in the understanding of coping with suffering. It doesn't eliminate suffering or doesn't push suffering outside the door somewhere, but it helps us cope with suffering, because I believe individually we all cope with suffering, but to have a companion along the way helps to lighten when we do something good to others, then others have done good to us as well. It helps in the journey of life. The scriptures, the Bible says God is love, but I think a more broken down version of love is what the Holy Father speaks today for Francis. He speaks of compassion, of entering the shoe of another, of one who suffers, to put ourselves in the shoe of others. And that's one way of doing good to others. Remembering that others think of us and do good to us too. But I wish to finish with this last note. Our modern world today is very, very acutely aware of suffering, evil, far more than perhaps years before. Every day we see it, every day information trickles down to us quite easily. And one of the easiest things to do in the grand scheme of things is at the end, when we raise the white flag and say, what's going on in life? Why is this way? At some point, that question will rise, why did you allow this? Why God? I think that's something to take back, because a good God doesn't bring suffering. And that's His nature. God is love. A good God doesn't beget suffering. Suffering is really much more closer to us. It's probably around us. It's ours to deal with, ours that has caused. So the consolation of religion is really the reverse of it, the goodness. Here in the seminary we train priests. In the ministry of priests is really simply broken down to the words that we say, the touch, the ministry. This is all about sharing the goodness of God, the love of God. I believe in other faiths, other more simple humanness help to bring the goodness of God more realistically to people who are in suffering. Because as much as we speak of God in the scheme of this discussion, very hard to hear God speak to us directly. How do we do that? Probably through one another, probably through our reflection, through our prayer, our spirituality that transforms into some goodness that we transfer to others. And this, I think, can go across all faiths. Thank you.
Okay, I think it's very timely for me to kind of conclude the fact that when we experiencing suffering or difficulty, adversities, it's two parts. We as individual is befalling upon us, or another one is befalling upon the others. Islam provides both sides of the thing. So how do we console ourselves from the belief? From Islamic belief, when you experience difficulty. So there's one tradition I would like to share with you from Prophet Muhammad, which is meaning no fatigue, no disease, no sadness, no pain, no distress befall a believer, even it's a prick that he received from a thorn, except that God will remove some of his sin, which means without sin we will go, or with the reduced sin we will end up in paradise. That's as far as individual is concerned. What about our responsibility of eliminating the suffering? The others. I don't want to share, it's being shared a lot, but there's another tradition. On something that we have, on the trivial matters to us, is trivial thing. This, of course, is coming from the mouth of Prophet Muhammad, telling us what happened before his time. Where he got it, of course, from the angel Jibril. He tells a story of a young man who walked in the desert, apparently, in the barren land. And then in the journey, he found a well. So you can imagine a well in the desert is not like you see a pool. It's deep down. You have to go down. You have to climb down. So he climbed down and he found water and he drank from that water. Then upon coming back to the surface, he climbed, and then he saw a dog. Thirsty dog, with the tongue. And that moment, something came into his mind, which is relating to the thirstiness of the dog and he as human being, which belong to God. He said, this dog thirsty like I was thirsty before. And God put me as a middleman between this thirsty dog and God to evaluate the thirstiness of the dog. So he climbed down, back again, taking out his shoes and taking out the water and giving back to the dog. And God tells us that this guy, God removed all his sin and he entered paradise. So, dear audience, what we learn from my religion is that even though helping a dog in a normal life, dog is something that you want to get rid, you want to see, unless you take as a pet dog. But generally, it's a stray dog is something that you don't even blink, even see. But the religion tells us, even though you have a dog, will earn you a place in paradise, regardless of the sin that you have done. So we as human beings, we keep doing goodness, hoping that a small event, trivial event like this, will grant us paradise. So this will give us motivation to do whatever good. The dog, even though you can deal with the dog and then earn you a ticket, what more helping fellow human being, which is, around us and far away, suffering a lot. So this all give us the motivation to keep doing good until we believe that this will give us the opportunity to do as much as possible goodness, and this will earn our place in the hereafter where we will live eternally, forever. No suffering, no pain, no sickness, no old age. It's all full of pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Prof. Roslan, with a nice remark to remind us God's grace is bigger than ocean, bigger than what we can comprehend. And if I may, I would treat that as our concluding session, concluding remarks for today. But before we end, let me try to bring back all the elements that we've spoken about so far. Through Father Surain, he talked about how he quote from Thomas Aquinas about how we are prone to see evil first instead of noticing the lights and the goodness, and also and then Dr. Surya mentioned, talked to us about how religion lists down how to end the suffering, the cycle of birth, the cycle of the continuous, the endless cycle of death and birth by escaping it through the eight fold of novel, eight novel, novel Ephobas, this is something I have to drill into my head. And Prof. Roslan remind us about the God's grace and something that God won't bestow upon us any suffering unless God is giving us a redemption in another way in the hereafter. With that, I would like to thank our three speakers here today for enlightening sessions. For our audience here, thank you for joining us, and please treat this session as each of you are in a house and looking at us through a window. This is just an invitation to the web of knowledge out there. Please walk out of your door and enjoy your small knowledge and get to know each other. And we hope to see you at another platform, hopefully dialogue or in other occasions. With that, thank you so much, and I'm going to pass the mic back to our MC.